call. Ms. Mucko,
Here.
Mr. Olson,
Here.
Mr. Walker, Mr. Clock, Mr. Erkins.
I think those are both.
Here.
Is I on?
Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? All right, seeing none, let's move forward to the approval of the minutes for the work session dated December 16th, 2021.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Work session minutes are approved. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the regular meeting dated December 16th, 2021.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor? All
Aye.
right.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Regular minutes are approved. On to the monthly activity and financial report. Pat, Anne Marie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Couple of quick highlights. In the holidays, we had the fellowship of, should be fellowship, sorry, this says Federation, I typo on my end. Fellowship of Christian Athletes. We served 1,000 people for breakfast to hear Lou Holtz. Event went really well, very well attended. No issues that we're aware of as a result. The team did take advantage of the opportunity to do several projects and capital projects and just deep cleaning after the several events we did have in December. So we took care of that. It's ironic because about 2 weeks ago, I did an interview with a local news station. And at the time we had, the question was what cancellations have we had? And at that time, we hadn't had any. There had been a couple of inquiries and those sorts of things about Omicron and what we were doing. But at the time, it was business as usual. And then in the course of about the last week, we've had a few cancellations. We did have 2 canceled for the Saturday, 2 dinners. But as you hopefully saw when you were coming in the building today, we continue to have events practically daily. Several legislative events are being held. We did a dinner for 600 or 650 week and a half ago on Saturday night. We did meetings for 600 on that Friday. So we have the Idaho Nursery and Landscape Association is in West for their convention, first time in 2 years, and her numbers are doing very, very well. I was talking to the contact at lunch, and she's really pleased. A great turnout. A couple of cities apparently restricted travel on anyone from their communities, Parks and Rec departments from attending, but otherwise her numbers are actually very, very good. We continue to monitor it. This sounds like a broken record from 2020 and 2021, but we're continuing to monitor. But so far, people are continuing to meet. And while some attendance is down a little bit here and there, for the most part, the events continue to happen. So we continue to manage and monitor. During the holidays, my team is responsible for cleaning the Grove Plaza in the contract with the city or with Parks and Rec. And so during some of the big snowstorms that we had, again, our agreement is that we help maintain the plaza. So this is just some fun that the team had. They turned shoveling all the plaza into a kind of a team building event, building a snowman out there. So just letting you know about that. And again, some team training that we took advantage of during the holidays was the AV department, which, back when I first started with Boise Center, we had Chris Morrison, and that was it in our AV department. And I think we're up to about 10 or 12 people. So again, it's kind of fun to look at the growth in the organization over time. Visitor center statistics, typical for the winter, pretty low. So this isn't anything new. We've talked to Parks and Rec about limiting some hours for the next couple of months. And so I'm in some discussions with the Parks and Rec director. But again, we're still getting visitors, so that's good. Since this is the first month of the new fiscal year, some of the numbers are raw at this point. Our cash position remains very strong. after, as we've said several times, after a great room tax year last year. So again, this is the year-end report for Star, and it lags a month. So these are our year-end results. And again, I think we've spoken about this several times up to this point. Strong ADR and occupancy. And in fact, the initial room tax collections for December are the initial numbers look really good, and you'll see those in a minute. Again, demand, total revenues strong for the year. We were happy about that. Sales and marketing starting out strong this year. As we've said all along, 2022 has potential to be a record year. Again, a little bumpy road start, certainly not nearly what we saw a year ago. So we remain optimistic. We still have over 70 groups for this year. So and bookings in 23 are already strong. So the team sees a lot of strong potential for the next 2-3 years. A lot of inquiries. Again, confirmed conventions, the grade B, the 100 to 300 room nights, that remains our bread and butter. But the 300 plus, I mean, we're seeing continued growth in inquiries into some of the bigger conventions, particularly those that have multiple divisions, that instead of doing one big division meeting like in Orlando or Las Vegas, they're starting to consider more regionalized. So smaller events of 800, 1,000, 1,200, of which we get right in that hunt. So Allie and Kay were at PCMA last week and said it was really, really a positive experience and a good event. So we're hoping to continue to see that growth. With that, I'll turn over to Anne Marie.
Madam Chair and Board, we had overall, we're still doing well compared to budget. As Pat indicated, with the Boise Center, the room revenues were below budget, and we'll go over that on the next slide. But the hotel tax revenues continue above budget. So we have a positive variance at the end of the month of $332,000. You can see here the hotel room tax were budgeted. And we were about $200,000 over budget for the month. Ended up the month at 605 and the budget was 480. So good month for room tax.
And what is
It's
the,
a record. If you look at December, it's the best December we've ever had.
Oh,
yeah, I
Yeah.
saw that, which is great. What is the forecast for this year again? The total, is it 8 point?
well, the budget right now is 8.1 million.
8.9, okay.
And so we're 200,000 over that in the first month. And then for the Boise Center, our budget was $507,000 for our revenue. It was, and it came in at 283. It's the second lowest. So while you have the highest room tax, you get the second lowest December revenue. Unfortunately, we had almost $184,000 in events cancel in December. I went through and looked at the schedule to see, and that was about 11 events. I went through and looked at the forecast. We've had year-to-date almost $800,000 in events cancel through June. And then we look from July forward, and that's holding strong. So hopefully we get through June and things continue to remain strong for the rest of the year.
Were those a lot of holiday parties or?
There was 11 in December.
Okay.
And that's what they were, was a lot of, like you said, holiday parties.
One thing I'll add, in a PEO meeting the other day, the event managers were saying that while we've had a couple of cancellations, the number of inquiries for smaller meetings is extremely strong right now. So while we're losing a couple of big ones, some of the smaller ones seem to be wanting to meet. So we'll see how it all shakes out.
Well, and some of them too are, going to more virtual. So unfortunately, that affects our food and beverage. We may have still have good attendance, but if they're virtual, they're not eating food and beverage. And so that affects our revenues too. And here's our square foot utilization. You can see that we have an 84% increase over 2021. Again, showing some signs of softening with some of the cancellations, but the forecast anyway for 2022 surpasses 2019 in 2 months, 2 of the 12 months. So positive trends. You can see I added 2023, which is the blue, to the forecast as well. So you can see what 2023 looks like as well. And 2023 is looking stronger. Our events continue to stabilize with around 20 to 30 events. Again, a little bit lower than last year, where last year we were around 30 to 38 events. Our event days were down in December. We don't have usually conventions in December, so that always affects. But the day visits were higher than the prior year. Utilization was down from November, but our gross profit is right now about $13,000 below budget due to the higher labor. When we are staffing for higher revenues and it doesn't occur, we use the labor for special projects, which affects obviously the gross profit. And the EBITDA is $199,000 better than budget as we continue to manage our sales, general and administrative expenses. Year to date, obviously, first month out of the year, so no year to date. And any questions? I did want to give an update, I guess, on the audit as well. We're finishing up the audit. It started last week. It's gone very well. Very few questions from the auditors. We had an internal control review in August, and I think that went a long ways towards helping them be prepared for the audit, understand how we operate, what we do. I know Lee, our lead auditor, our partner, said after they came through the internal control review, had said that they would never come to an event here again without looking at it differently, because they just couldn't believe all the work that goes on behind the scenes. But by documenting our internal control processes, they had most of that work done, and has made the audit go really well. So they're starting to work on footnotes. And internally, we're starting to work on the management discussion and analysis. The goal is to get done as soon as possible and to continue moving forward. We will do with the plan to present in March. So anyway, that's a great relief, I think, I know for me personally, and hopefully for the audit committee and the board to know I believe we're in good hands this year.
And Jody, did you have anything else to add regarding the audit? Jody, anything else regarding the audit or the communication? Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yep.
I've got a question for Pat. I'm just wondering, since we're doing so well on the room tax revenue, are the hoteliers projecting out to 23 in positive terms, or when do they see this ending, this growth rate?
I haven't spoken, pardon me, I had meetings with John Cunningham and Eric Hansen both last week. And in a general sense, they're really optimistic about this year. Some of our conversation are obviously alluded to what I thought was going to happen on the convention market side with cancellations and what our position was with the clients. And so, barring major conventions canceling, and again, the first quarter for us is not a big convention quarter. It's more local events, trade shows like the Idaho Nursery Association, the wedding show, those sorts of things. So really, the second quarter right now is holding strong. People still want to have the conventions. they're hesitant to cancel. So I think the next 30 to 45 days are really going to determine what it looks like. Obviously, that puts us in, into the start of the second quarter, but people are hesitant to cancel at this point. So to answer the question, I mean, right now, everybody's pretty optimistic, although with the increase in actual convention travelers, the average rate will drop because convention rates are traditionally lower than leisure market rates. So from an occupancy side, it's remaining strong. The rates probably will affect room tax year on year comparative down, but again, it's simply a matter of mix.
All right. All right, thanks, Pat.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. I'd entertain a motion to accept the monthly activity and financial report.
So move.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Report is approved. On to other business, cybersecurity update. Pat, if you wanted to.
Sure. I mean, you all know Tony, but normally he's over there. So today he's going to be on the presentation side for us. Based on some of the comments, concerns, questions, dialogue that we collectively have had over the last several months with the board and trying to keep you all up to speed on what we're doing to prevent cyber attacks, protect the district, protect the center, protect you and us both. We discussed November, December to have Tony present today some of the internal workings that we do, because quite frankly, I'm the dumbest guy in the room when it comes to these things, and he's the smartest guy in the room. So thought we have Tony. We did, Brandon Doty is our safety security manager, and in discussions with both Brandon and Tony, Brandon really didn't need to be here. So I mean, he just didn't need to be here. So we have Tony.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members and guests. I want to take a few minutes to discuss everybody's favorite topic, cybersecurity. And to Pat's comments, Pat and Cody got together with me and we had a discussion about what we should go over with the board. A, to protect the board members from what they could possibly do to the center without knowing it, and B, what we're doing as an organization to protect our data internally. So so we have three topics today: phishing, ransomware, and data protection. We'll go through each one. If I would ask that if anybody has any questions, if they can hold it till the end, it's easier just to answer the questions at the end of the presentation than in the middle. So the first one is phishing. Phishing is a common cause of data breaches. It's almost 90% of data breaches that are active today. It's targeted emailing. It's sent to small groups of individuals. They use social engineering tactics. If you look at the two examples that are up there right now, these are two current ones, not to pick on our chairperson and our executive director, but these are primary examples of the type of emails that people get outside of the organization and inside of the organization. Unfortunately, we did have an incident internally where one of our employees was bilked out of $2,000 because they did fall for one of these types of email scams. We do a lot of training. There's a lot of awareness for phishing in the building, but for whatever reason, this person thought that it was a legitimate request and carried it all the way through. So it's not if it's going to happen, it will happen. Our job is to mitigate it as much as we possibly can. The best practices for phishing is learn to identify phishing emails. If we go back to these slides, if you look at these examples, you can see some pretty blatant things in these emails that would cause you to raise a red flag and to reach out to the individuals that you think this might have come from. I mean, in Pat's case, you can clearly see that's not his email address. The other thing you can look for is grammatical errors inside the body of the message. There's a lot of red flags in both of these. So,
Also,
sorry.
we don't talk, I mean, that just the cadence of the language, it's like,
Exactly.
Correct.
But when I got that one this morning,
that's funny.
it's
Yeah.
like, hey, here's an example for you.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
The team got hit twice, 2 weeks ago, twice in 1 week from emails that supposedly came from me.
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
then when Tony, we happened to be in a staff meeting, when all of a sudden a couple of people start chuckling, that an email blast came out from me supposedly to most of the people in the room. So it was a great learning.
It
was
was.
a great teaching moment.
Mhm.
It was. And the comment was Pat's at it again. He's looking for gift cards one more time. So as
Don't
I,
like this money.
as I said, I mean, there's some best practices for phishing. Learn to identify phishing emails, exercise caution if there are any hyperlinks inside of emails, especially if you receive an email from someone that you don't necessarily think it's legitimate. Don't download any attachments if you're not 100% sure that the attachment is valid. As I said earlier, look out for the warning signs, the grammatical errors, the email address is not looking, even though it says Pat Rice or Kristen Mukow, you can clearly see, hey, that's not their legitimate email address. Think before you click or take action. Never hand over any sensitive information. That's one of the biggest social engineering things that they try and use is to grab passwords, credit card numbers, things of that nature. And honestly, the best practice over all of them is if you receive an email from someone that might look legit, give the person that sent you the email a phone call or text them or however you contact them and say, hey, did you send me an email? 99 times out of 100, they'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Next threat is ransomware. Ransomware is in the news. It's malware that employs encryption to hold the victim's information at ransom. A user or an organization's critical data is encrypted, so they can't access their files, their databases, or applications. A ransom is then demanded to provide access. Ransomware is often designed to spread across a network and target not so much databases anymore, but file servers and quickly paralyze an organization where you have no access to your data any longer. It's a growing threat. It generates billions of dollars in payments to cyber criminals. I found out a term while I was building this presentation. You now have ransomware as a service. So you have developers that build the ransomware, they sell it to a third party who then uses it to make money off of it. So it's definitely a booming business in the dark web. And ransomware, significant damage to an organization. The Colonial Pipeline is a perfect example. If everybody remembers when the Colonial Pipeline was taken down on the East Coast, which served the entire Northeast for gasoline supply. That threat was born out of a public-facing server that was spun up because of COVID and because of all of the remote workers. So it's that simple. They thought they were doing the right thing by enabling remote access for their employees, but they didn't put the data that the people needed to access behind a firewall. It was public facing. Any one of us could have gotten to it. Here's some examples of what you see if if you've been infected with ransomware. There's hundreds of examples of ransomware that's currently running rampant in the United States and worldwide. According to the graphic down at the bottom, every 11 seconds, a new organization falls victim to ransomware. And 73% of all ransomware attacks in 2020 were successful. So that means someone did pay the ransom, or they were hacked and didn't pay the ransom and lost all their data. I will tell you that the ransomware business, it's kind of ironic. It's honor among thieves, because if they don't decrypt your files when you pay, that business will go away, because people will say, organizations will say, okay, we're just not going to pay you, because we have examples where other corporations have paid and you did not follow through on your end of the bargain. So for this to work, they have to be honorable, quote unquote, and adhere to their guidelines when they say, hey, you pay the ransom, we're going to free up your files. The best practices for ransomware, and you're going to hear this when I do our follow-up for what the Boise Center is doing. Back up your data. Ransomware is only as dangerous as your last backup. If you have a solid backup plan and your data is backed up properly, you don't pay the ransom and you take it on the chin, and the worst you might possibly lose is 24 hours. So I don't know of any organization that wouldn't be willing to lose 24 hours of data instead of paying $100,000 or $200,000 or $1 million or whatever it is that ransom that they're asking for. Use security software, virus protection, keep it up to date, practice safe surfing. And by safe surfing is if you're on a public network, do your best to use VPN software. Don't just connect to a public network in the airport. They're extremely dangerous. If you do, make sure that you have VPN software running on your device prior to connecting to the wireless. Stay informed, just, pay attention to the news reports and implement a security awareness program. That's more for this organization. But again, it's for individuals, stay abreast, be wary, and have a plan if you do happen to lose data personally. Again, back it up. Data compromise, that's phishing, hacking, or malware. Simple negligence. Simple negligence can be that you attach the wrong file to an email and you send it to someone, the wrong recipient out in the world. It could be payroll information. It could be any of those things. And usually data compromise averages about 3.86 million per incident worldwide. So it's a lot of money. Best practices for data compromise: use encrypted locations, SharePoint, Google Drive, things of that nature. That all that information is encrypted. Your connection from your PC to those services are encrypted. Don't use flash drives, especially from flash drives that you don't know the person that's giving you the flash drive. RAV events are a perfect example of that. Their laptops are set to scan as soon as someone puts a flash drive into one of the devices. Sharing, who's authorized. I've had a couple of instances, when I say authorized, where I've received information from a third party outside of the building that wasn't meant for me, but they accidentally pulled it up in their recently used addresses because they might have 5 Anthony's in their address book and they just click on the wrong one. Same thing for CCing someone. Be careful when you CC someone on an email. Are they supposed to get the information that you're sending out? I've had that happen as well. I've done it where I've CC'd the wrong person when I'm sending out an email. It's nothing extremely dangerous, but it could be. Secured networks, that's the VPN topic that I mentioned. Destruction. When you recycle a file on your computer, just because it's gone out of the recycle bin, it doesn't mean that it's gone. It's still there. It's just been wiped from the hard drive index. So if you're going to get rid of your device, use some software to wipe the hard drive on that machine at least 10 times. And there's free software out there to do that. One of the best things about improving cybersecurity is you report any suspected threats. If you receive an email, then you're not sure where it came from, take a screenshot of it and send it to the IT department. That's what our staff does now. That will help stop attacks, and it will also protect your coworkers. And this is what Boise Center does currently. The majority of our data is out in the cloud: Ungerbach, Plate IQ, Reciprocity, Office 365, social tables, et cetera. Those are all cloud-based, and they are all secure. They all have their own data recovery plans in the event of ransomware or data loss. All of our on-premise servers are imaged nightly. So the worst case scenario for us, if we lost some data on a server in the building, is 24 hours. Versioning is enabled in SharePoint and OneDrive, and versioning is basically previous versions of files that you've created. Currently, we store up to 30 days of previous files. We do have spam filtering enabled now through Office 365. It's going to be enhanced. We're getting ready to deploy Microsoft Intune and ATP Defender. ATP Defender is virus protection, and Microsoft Intune allows us to control updates throughout the facility. And last but not least, I love these two cartoons because the top one, if you can see, it says in this corner, we have firewalls, encryption, antivirus software, et cetera. And in this corner, we have Dave. Human error is the biggest culprit when it comes to any of these data breaches. The Dilbert one at the bottom is also very funny to me. You've got, all it takes is one person, okey dokey, I can do that. And that's it. That's all it takes is one click that you shouldn't have done. Does anybody have any comments, any questions?
VPN recommendation?
Yeah, there's a couple. You have OpenVPN and NordVPN. Those are both free. We're going to be deploying Azure VPN here, which is part of the Microsoft Azure offering from Microsoft, and it's part of Office 365. We'll be rolling that out. We currently have VPN connectivity into the building, but it's not the most secure VPN. It could be better. You need to stay in front of it. We have very limited amount of people that connect via VPN into the building. It's more often than not, it's just the finance department. Again, there are other ones out there. Some of them are paid, some of them aren't. Most of the free ones are pretty solid. And then you just create an account on their server, create credentials, you log into your VPN, and then they give you an encrypted tunnel into the internet.
Madam Chair,
Mhm.
can you run more than one VPN at a time? Will they kind of overlap each other?
They would. I don't recommend that. You should have one secure connection at a time, because if you have applications that are depending on one VPN connection, the application knows which VPN connection it's supposed to be using. If you open up a second VPN connection, that application might be confused and not work at all.
Yeah.
It'll disconnect you.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Any questions?
Awesome. Thank you.
If you do end up with any questions, Tony is available via email, or you can call either his direct line or just go through the office line. And if you all have issues at home that you may have questions about.
Thank you. Okay. Nick?
Madam Chair, Board, thank you for having us. After that, I'll be throwing out my cell phone, laptop, any computers. Thank you for that. Saved me a lot of money and time. Just a couple quick updates here. The permits are into the city. We are just awaiting their approval. Final permits have gone in. Board members will be notified once we have approval and a groundbreaking scheduled at the site. Sprung is in production and expected to be here mid-March. Mirtha, the pool builder, is in production and expected to be here mid to late April. CEM Aquatics, who is the actual pool builder, and Sprung are discussing the dynamics right now of working at the same time. The end of the Sprung erection and the beginning of the pool build will overlap by a couple of weeks, and both companies have said it's not an issue, and they've done it before, and they'll work on it and figure out how they both work at the same time to keep everything moving forward.
So when that product comes in, will it just go to the site? Is it gonna be?
Yeah, the Sprung product will go straight to the site, and they'll start erecting the structure, the beams and whatnot to the north of where it will be actually erected. And then they'll put those up using a crane. The Mirtha pool will go straight to the site. It is a very, very lot of side panels and PVC membrane, which is melded onto the stainless steel. And that all gets built inside the pool that is dug and concreted.
So any concerns about security of that stuff being there?
We've been talking about trying to see how we go about making sure that everything is secured. obviously, I don't think that they would need a fairly large truck or forklift, or it wouldn't be an everyday person walking down the street and hopping a fence and grabbing any of this stuff. It is all fairly large. But there is still, we have seen, there was an issue with a pool in Oregon one time that they believe was someone who was working on the site, broke onto the site, stole a bunch of the stuff, and the company ended up having to buy a new pool because they just didn't secure it.
Or even vandalism, I think, that would be something.
Vandalism, the only issues, I mean, all that stuff will be locked into, all the Murtha stuff and the Sprung stuff will be locked on the site, and then locked into, the Murtha will be locked into the storage containers that we'll have on site for there, so that none of that gets damaged. Our biggest issue to date has been people parking their RVs out in front of the site and leaving them there for a few days or abandoning them. So that's the only sort of thing we've had to deal with right now.
So Nick, when you were sharing with me earlier, I wasn't aware that Murtha is an Italian manufacturer. And so one of the things, if you want to touch
So,
bases real
Yeah,
quick
we'll make a decision here in the next couple weeks, months. Murtha the pool is produced in Italy and will be shipped over here. So we'll have to make the decision based on how the shipping is going on the West Coast, if everything is coming in smoothly or if it's being delayed, whether we ship it here to the West Coast or ship it to the East Coast and have it railed over. Cost was not much more to ship it to the East Coast and rail it over here. And was worth, the extra cost for that was worth avoiding the delay of having a pool sit in port on a ship for 45 or 50 days, which we have seen with 3 or 4 Murtha products or Murtha pools happening in California at this point. They're there, the product is there, it's on the ship, it's just waiting to be unloaded, and they've been waiting 40, 50 days.
Is that just a staffing issue that there's not enough labor to unload? or-
I don't know what that issue would be as far as a shipping yard. I would assume that would be their issues. But I'm not entirely sure of what that looks like.
So TBD on delays regarding shipping, but everything else production wise.
Everything else production wise is going smooth. We are ready, just waiting for the city to approve all these permits, and then we'll get started and get moving. We are excited about the very busy next 9 to 10 months that we have to get this project started and finished.
Any feeling that it wouldn't go through the city or that it would be delayed?
No, none really. I think their biggest concern was just the holiday. We had put it in probably a week or 2 before Christmas, so we're sort of still on schedule. They say 4 to 6 weeks, and we're coming up on that 5-week period right now because of their shutdown for the holidays.
Any questions?
Madam Chair, Nick, probably Anne Marie, impact fees. Have we learned anything? Isn't there an issue about whether we'll pay impact fees on this project?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Jody, we're still discussing that with ACHD. There's, several nuances, one of which is ACHD will waive impact fees for taxing entities, and their definition of taxing entities may not cover us or not, given that we don't, our taxes are room taxes, post-part taxes. Second of which is, although we will own it, we won't be operating it, and therefore does that somehow also bring into question their sort of waiver of impact fees for governmental entities. So they're still having discussions about that.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons we focused on us owning this was to avoid things like impact fees.
Yeah, well, again, the property tax issue is different than the impact fee issue. So we're sort of at the mercy of ACHD's internal rules.
And how are those impact fees calculated? Is it based on potential number of additional traffic?
That's actually, and Nick, maybe you know this more than I, they're actually discussing that as well, which is what is the appropriate mechanism to determine what impact fee is applicable to a project of this type. And we don't, it does not easily fit within the way that they normally calculate impact fees. So that's one of the other discussions they're having as well.
We were told a similar thing, that our project doesn't fit into one of their sort of normal calculations, and that we would hear back from them once they sort of figured out how this project fit into their calculations and their impact.
Thank you.
Indeed. Any other questions? All right. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Sullivan Reberger.
Madam Chairman, board members, I'll give you a brief update on what's going on in the legislature real quick, and I'll open it up for questions. Legislature opened on the 10th, as you all well know, 10th of January. We're now in our second week of the session. The first week, the governor gave his state of the state message on Monday. And I won't go into all the details of it, but mostly centered around tax rebate, tax cut, and education funding, pretty heavy education funding for this year. There'll be a 10% increase in teacher salaries, $1,000 bonus. And then kind of he went back to what he did last year and is going to build, road infrastructure, some building maintenance infrastructure, city water system infrastructure, some water infrastructure. It's all going to be kind of one-time money, which we spent by the, which will the $1.9 billion surplus will take care of these one-time expenditures. This week, the tax bill was up in, on Monday, it was taken up in the Revenue Tax Committee of the House. Highly unusual.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, can we have him get closer to the mic, please?
Sure. Over here.
Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Sure. I was talking about the tax bill that was introduced by the governor during his State of the State. That tax bill came up this week in the Revenue Tax Committee, passed out of the Revenue Tax Committee unanimously, except for 2 votes. 2 Democrat voted against it, and it just voted off the floor of the House today, 57-13. That's very interesting, and it should be highlighted because tax bills like that usually sit through the legislature the entire session. And at the very end, it turns into cannon fodder and fighting fodder between the House, the Senate, and the executive branch. The fact that they passed that bill so quickly tells me a couple things. One is it's very popular this year amongst the folks running for re-election. And 2, the House and the Senate have been meeting regularly and they want to get the heck out of here. So passing that tells me that they're going to want to expedite the process this year. They want to get out of here. They're telling us that March 25th is the go home date. And what they did today, the passage of that bill tells me that they're very serious about that date. Overshadowing all of this is redistricting. And the court here, the court heard the issue on Friday, the Supreme Court. They're all anxiously waiting to see what happens with the plan submitted to the Supremes. We don't know what's going to happen. I think it's stymied the legislature a bit. You don't see much. There's not a lot of bills dropped. They're waiting. John Sheldon in our office today was told today by a legislator that next week it's going to, all hell's going to break loose. And we're going to see a whole bunch of bills. We're going to see, everything from critical race theory, grocery tax, COVID mandate bills. I'm sure we'll see, the abortion bills, gun bills. I think you're going to start seeing this stuff all start pop up. Those are always primary issue legislative items. They usually don't go anywhere. But folks introduce them so they can use them for the rhetoric in their prospective legislative district campaigns. I do believe that we're going to move towards it. I do believe that they're really going to move quickly this year. They're telling all of us that have your ducks in a row, ready to roll in the committees. And I think people are getting behind the legislature. From what I gathered in the last 3 sessions, have fought the governor on his budget. This year, I think they're going to fall right in line with the budget. The JFAC committee is working diligently. The Joint Finance Appropriations Committee, the House and Senate, are working. They started day one. And from what we're hearing from the 2 chairmen of those committees, I think they're going to basically follow the governor's vision. The governor has, I think, a good budget this year. I think they're going to pass it. And I don't see them doing a whole lot other than passing a budget and maybe going home. Now, there certainly some other things may come up in the meantime, but that's what you know, that's what the current thought is today. It all could change next week. And Madam Chairman, that's my report. If there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them if I can.
Any questions?
Madam Chair,
Uh,
do we have any particular bills we're advocating for or fighting against?
Well, I think we always, we go through your basic standard list of issues that you have every year, whether impact fees or whatever they may be. And we just monitor all that stuff and watch it. I think this is going to be a year where you're not going to see a lot of that activity, just because, again, re-elections change their attitudes. They're going to want to get out of here. They're not going to spend their time on a lot of controversial things. The social controversial issues they want to spend their time on, but the substantive stuff, we think it may be fairly light this year. But, you know, having said that, you know, 3 weeks from now could be crazy. But we just have a monitoring list. We sit down with the director, with Patrick, every couple of weeks, and he picks up things we'll pick up, and we'll try to compare notes, and anything that comes up that looks like it may affect the auditorium district, we send it over for a look-see with you guys, a thumbs up or thumbs down on where you want to go with it, and we move forward.
Chase?
Yes, I was wondering if there's been any discussion on House Bill 389, any revision to that would affect that. It's got a big impact on a lot of our cities. I'm just wondering if they've said anything yet.
House Bill 3, will you remind me, House Bill 389?
The one that makes it so that cities can't grow their budget by a certain percentage. I think 8% is coming to my mind.
Yeah, there's a number of those bills that are going to be sitting over in the the Rev and Tax Committee. Frankly, I think a lot of that stuff's going to get bottled up this year. Again, these folks are up for re-election. They don't want to go fight with their cities and their mayors. They don't want to fight with their county commissioners this year. Now, they will in an off election year, but election years, they have a tendency now to want to have to battle with the locals. So some of these local issues, I think, may take a back seat where maybe last year they were running hot and heavy. That's my observation right now. I just don't see any groundswell from legislators wanting to go take those issues on right now. Again, this is going to be a year where they're going to want to roll out their bills that they can take to a primary, in a Republican primary, specifically the gun issues, the abortion issues, critical race theory issues, those kind of things that resonate with that hard right base. That's what I see.
And is there any more movement on, I think I saw something about changing the primary structure for the Republican committee?
There's talk about that. And if I might refer that to Phil. Do you have any insights on that? Yeah. Right.
That's unlikely to come out of this session.
Right.
That was by the state party committee
Mhm.
rules, and they rejected the proposal from Idaho Falls.
Okay.
I think there's a groundswell to do something like that. I just don't think it's ready yet, but maybe in the next few years, we'll see something like that.
Any further questions? All right,
I'd like to offer to, I have John Sheldon here and Phil Reberger. Do
Yeah.
you guys have anything you want to offer? Okay. That's it.
well, we'll see what happens next week, right?
It could all change. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, see no other business before the board. Meeting is adjourned.